ransomware known as WannaCry.
Security experts say this is one of the worst and most widespread pieces of malware they've ever seen.
The National Security Agency developed this software, and it's now being used by criminals around the world to demand ransom.
What would you do if your computer suddenly locked up and a chilling message demanded hundreds of dollars in ransom? In May 2017, this nightmare became a reality. A massive worldwide cyber attack known as WannaCry emerged, crippling critical systems and spreading at an unprecedented rate. Within hours, 230,000 computers across 150 countries were infected, marking one of the most devastating ransomware attacks in history. Who was behind this attack? And who is Marcus Hutchins? And why was he arrested for his involvement in WannaCry? Let's find out. The attack began early on the morning of May 12, 2017. Reports indicate the first infection occurred at 7:44 a.m. UTC, originating from a Southeast Asian ISP. Over the next few hours, WannaCry's impact snowballed, reaching Latin America, Europe, the UK, and eventually Asia. By 12:39 p.m. UTC, an astonishing 74% of ISPs in Asia were compromised. The speed of WannaCry's spread was unparalleled, fueled by an exploit called EternalBlue, which targeted unpatched Microsoft Windows systems. Organizations worldwide, including hospitals, banks, energy companies, police departments, and railways, were forced offline. By the end of the first day, systems in 74 countries were crippled, causing billions of dollars in economic damage. This global escalation left businesses and governments scrambling to contain the threat. For many, the question remained, if this attack could spread so quickly, how much worse could the next one be?
The attack infected 7,000 computers in the first hour, 110,000 distinct IP addresses in 2 days, and in almost 100 countries, including the UK, Russia, China, Ukraine, and India. Experts now believe WannaCry affected approximately 1 to 2 million unique systems worldwide prior to activating the kill switch.
Ransomware is a type of malware that operates in a straightforward yet devastating way. It is most commonly spread through phishing attacks, deceptive emails that trick users into clicking malicious links or downloading infected attachments. These links often lead to sites that steal sensitive information or silently execute malware on the victim's computer. However, while phishing is a typical way, it was later confirmed that WannaCry did not originate from a phishing attack, but more on that later. Once ransomware infects a system, it begins encrypting files almost instantly. In just seconds or minutes, the malware converts readable files, known as plain text, into ciphertext, which looks like unreadable gibberish. To recover these files back to readable format, victims require a unique decryption key that attackers promise to provide in exchange for a ransom payment. What makes ransomware so terrifying is the near impossibility of breaking the encryption without the decryption key. Encryption algorithms like RSA, frequently used in ransomware attacks, are so robust that even modern technology would need millions, billions, or even trillions of years to crack them. Victims of the WannaCry ransomware were greeted by an ominous message and a hostile-looking wallpaper. Everyday files, documents, spreadsheets, images, videos, and music were encrypted and rendered inaccessible. In essence, the files were held hostage until the victim paid the ransom. WannaCry, also known as Wanna Decryptor 2.0, provided instructions in 28 languages, guiding victims on how to recover their data. The attackers initially demanded $300 worth of Bitcoin as payment for the decryption key. If victims failed to pay within 3 days, the ransom doubled to $600, with a warning that after 7 days, the files would be permanently lost. Strangely, the attackers even included a message offering to return files for free after 6 months to those they deemed too poor to pay. Let's observe what happens when a sample of WannaCry ransomware is executed. As soon as the .exe file is opened, the ransomware gets to work. In a matter of seconds, the files on the system are encrypted and renamed with new extensions. The desktop wallpaper changes to display a warning, and the notorious Wanna Decryptor 2.0 window pops up, demanding payment. The attackers demanded payment in Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency prized for its privacy and anonymity. Bitcoin was the ideal choice because it allows transactions to occur without directly revealing the identity of the sender or receiver. While payments can be traced to cryptocurrency wallets, identifying the actual owner requires extensive forensic analysis, something rarely achievable at scale. This level of anonymity is why Bitcoin is widely used on the dark web to purchase illegal goods and services, including weapons, drugs, and counterfeit products, items inaccessible on the surface web. What made WannaCry exponentially more dangerous than typical ransomware was its ability to spread across systems at an unprecedented rate. To fully understand this, we need to go back to 2016. In August 2016, a highly sophisticated cyber-attack group called the Equation Group, widely suspected of having ties to the National Security Agency (NSA), was hacked. The Equation Group, described by cybersecurity firm Kaspersky as one of the most advanced hacking groups in the world, was compromised by another group known as the Shadow Brokers. During this breach, large volumes of classified NSA hacking tools and exploits were stolen. This was particularly concerning because the NSA is known to develop nation-state level cyber tools. These tools are not typical malware but highly sophisticated exploits designed to carry out cyber attacks against rival nations. Essentially, the NSA would identify vulnerabilities and weaponize them, often recruiting elite hackers to operate with what could be described as a license to hack. For these hackers, their actions, when conducted on behalf of the state, would not be considered illegal within their own country. The real danger lies in the effectiveness of these nation-state tools. These exploits are powerful because they are created for use as cyber weapons against other nations and therefore must bypass the most robust defenses. The NSA reportedly discovered numerous vulnerabilities in the Windows operating system as early as 2013. However, rather than reporting these flaws to Microsoft or the broader InfoSec community to patch them, the agency allegedly chose to develop secret exploits and stockpile them for future operations. The shadow brokers, after obtaining these tools, attempted to auction them off. Despite their claims of possessing highly dangerous files, the online community largely doubted their credibility, leading the auction to fail spectacularly. The group, however, did not stop there. The shadow brokers' most significant move came on April 14, 2017, when they published their fifth leak, one that would go down as the most damaging release yet. In a tweet linking to their Steemit blockchain, they shared a post titled "Lost in Translation." This leak contained files from their failed auction, which the group now decided to release to the public for free. The description that provided the leak followed the usual pattern for the shadow brokers, written in broken but still understandable English. However, analysts widely believe this style was an intentional tactic to mislead cybersecurity researchers and obscure the group's true identity. The files linked in the post, now taken down, led to an archive filled with numerous Windows exploits, originally developed by the NSA. While the archive contained many valuable tools, two specific components are particularly relevant to the WannaCry attack: the double pulsar payload and the now infamous exploit known as EternalBlue. EternalBlue was the critical piece that allowed WannaCry to spread so rapidly. It leveraged a vulnerability in Microsoft's Server Message Block (SMB) protocol, which is used for file sharing across networks. Combined with double pulsar, a backdoor implant that enabled the delivery and execution of malware, WannaCry transformed from a typical ransomware attack into a global cyber catastrophe. Server Message Block version 1 or SMB v1 is a network communication protocol developed in 1983. Its primary function was to allow Windows computers to communicate with one another, enabling the sharing of files and printers over a local network. However, SMB v1 had a critical vulnerability that allowed for remote arbitrary code execution, which means an attacker could execute malicious code on a victim's computer over the internet. This vulnerability became the foundation for one of the most damaging exploits in modern cybersecurity history. The EternalBlue exploit took advantage of this weakness, simplifying the process. When the shadow brokers leaked the NSA's hacking tools, hackers seized the opportunity to install Double Pulsar, a tool that created a backdoor into systems. In cybersecurity terms, a backdoor is an entry point that allows hackers to access a system or network at will. The attackers could then use this backdoor to deliver their malicious payload, in this case, the WannaCry ransomware. Once a computer was infected with WannaCry, an unusual behavior occurred. It attempted to connect to a specific unregistered domain, which was essentially a random string of letters and numbers. If the ransomware failed to establish a connection to this domain, the real damage began. WannaCry would scan the network for port 445, the port used to host SMB-v1. If the port was open and vulnerable, the ransomware would spread to the next computer on the network. This self-propagating mechanism allowed WannaCry to spread incredibly quickly, resembling the behavior of a worm. Let's see how we can exploit the SMB-v1 vulnerability using a lab machine. First, we ping the target machine. This simple command helps us verify if the machine is responsive. If we get a reply, we know it's online and ready for the next steps. Now we run an Nmap scan on the target machine. This tool helps us identify open ports and services that might be vulnerable. Since SMB, the server message block protocol, operates on port 445, that's our main focus. When the scan completes, we find a critical vulnerability, SMB vuln MS 1710. This is better known as the EternalBlue exploit. Next, we fire up a tool like MSF Console or Metasploit. These frameworks have a vast database of exploits. We search for SMB-v1 and sure enough, the MS17_010_ EternalBlue module pops up. We configure the exploit by setting our target machine, the one vulnerable to SMB-v1, as the remote host. With that done, we are ready to run the exploit. When we run the exploit, the target machine tries to connect back to us, creating what's called a reverse shell. This connection gives us a terminal on the target machine, where we can execute commands. As we can see, we are in John's documents, able to explore the machine and interact with its files. And just like that, we've successfully exploited the EternalBlue vulnerability by finding and targeting a machine running SMB-v1. Remember, this walkthrough is strictly for educational purposes. You can check out tryhackme.com or Hack the Box for these machines. What made this attack especially devastating was that users on the network did not need to click on malicious links or download infected files to become victims. If their systems were vulnerable, WannaCry would infect them automatically and encrypt their data within seconds. This twofold attack, encryption of data through ransomware and the worm-like spreading component, is what made WannaCry so destructive. The attack primarily targeted Windows systems, including Windows XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10. A month prior to the Shadow Broker's leak on March 14, 2017, Microsoft became aware of the SMB-v1 vulnerability after it was publicly reported nearly 5 years after its initial discovery. Microsoft released a critical security patch known as MS17-010 to fix the issue. However, many organizations failed to update their systems, leaving them exposed. Worse still, major organizations were still running outdated systems like Windows XP or Server 2003, which had reached end of support. This meant they no longer received updates or patches, rendering them fully vulnerable to the EternalBlue exploit. For those interested in the technical details, the SMB vulnerability exploited by EternalBlue is now logged in the National Vulnerability Database under CVE 2017-0144. Marcus Hutchins, known online by his alias MalwareTech, was a 23-year-old British security researcher working for Crypto's Logic, a cybersecurity company in Los Angeles. On the afternoon of the WannaCry attack, after returning from lunch with a friend, Hutchins began scouring online message boards. He came across alarming news that a ransomware attack was rapidly spreading and taking down systems within the UK's National Health Service, NHS. Hutchins found it suspicious that the ransomware could affect so many devices simultaneously. He quickly concluded that the attack was likely a worm, not just a simple ransomware variant. Determined to understand it better, he asked a friend to send him a sample of the malware. Once he received it, he ran the malware in a virtual environment, a sandbox, with fake files, enabling him to reverse engineer and analyze how it functioned.
Checked some message boards and seen all of this news about something targeting the NHS. So obviously I was like, that sounds interesting, because usually ransomware hits like 1 or 2 major targets. But this was just hitting NHS hospitals all around the UK. And it was so consistent that I thought, like, this could be a worm. So I decided to jump into kind of looking into if I could have a sample of the WannaCry worm. I noticed it made a web request to an unregistered website, so I registered it. And as time went on, we noticed the infection count was steadily declining. After a few hours of that, we noticed a tweet by someone suggesting that the URL in fact was a kill switch that just disabled the malware.
To his surprise, he discovered that the malware was attempting to connect to an unregistered domain, a seemingly random string of letters and numbers. Acting instinctively, Hutchins registered the domain for just $10.69. What he didn't realize at the time was that this simple action would inadvertently halt the WannaCry infection. Later that day, Hutchins confirmed in a tweet that the domain registration stopping the ransomware's rapid spread was an accident, earning him the title of the Accidental Hero. For Hutchins, registering unregistered domains was simply a part of his workflow. By taking control of such domains, he could track malware or botnets to better understand their behavior. To clarify, a botnet is a network of computers hijacked by malicious actors to be used in attacks, such as flooding systems with traffic or stealing data. Each compromised computer in the botnet is called a bot, and together they form a powerful weapon for cybercriminals.
So the ransomware itself, WannaCry, had this kill switch. It was a domain name, which when you registered that domain name, it would kill the ransomware dead in its tracks.
The kill switch Hutchins discovered was essentially a fail-safe mechanism embedded in the WannaCry ransomware. The malware followed a simple if-then condition. If it failed to connect to the specified domain, the infection would proceed. If it could establish a connection, the attack would stop. This domain therefore acted as the kill switch, halting WannaCry's spread.
Fortunately, the hackers responsible for WannaCry mistakenly included a kill switch, which was uncovered by an employee of Cryptos Logic and used to terminate the attack. Cryptos Logic employee exploited a key mistake made by the hackers when he registered the domain connected to the ransomware attack. Experts estimate that the kill switch prevented 10 to 15 million unique worldwide system infections and reinfections.
The presence of the kill switch has puzzled researchers. The first theory is that the WannaCry attackers included it as a precaution, a way to stop the ransomware if it got out of control or caused unintended consequences. The second, more plausible theory, supported by Hutchins and other experts, suggests that the kill switch was designed to prevent analysis. Cybersecurity researchers often use sandbox environments, virtual machines isolated from real networks, to test and study malware. To evade detection, many advanced malware variants include mechanisms to self-destruct if they detect they are in a sandbox. Hutchins's sandbox setup likely triggered the kill switch during his analysis. However, the attackers made a critical mistake. Instead of using a dynamically generated domain, a new unique domain for each infection, they hard-coded a static domain into the malware. Because of this, every WannaCry infection worldwide attempted to contact the same domain. Once Hutchins registered it and put it online, the ransomware mistakenly believed it was running in a sandbox environment and terminated itself. If the attackers had used dynamic domains, Hutchins's registration would have only affected his sandbox, and the attack would have continued unabated. This oversight has led some researchers to speculate that the WannaCry attack may not have been driven by monetary gain. Instead, the attack may have had political motives, such as embarrassing the NSA after the shadow brokers leak. However, to this day, the attacker's true intentions remain unknown. Although Hutchins' domain registration stopped the ransomware, the fight was far from over. Less than an hour after Hutchins activated the domain, it came under attack. The attackers attempted to use the Mirai botnet to launch a distributed denial-of-service DDoS attack. A DDoS attack overwhelms a target domain with junk traffic, forcing it offline. If the kill switch domain went offline, WannaCry infections would resume, and the ransomware would spread uncontrollably once again. The Mirai botnet used in the attack was infamous, previously employed in one of the largest DDoS attacks in history. It consisted of hundreds of thousands of hijacked devices. Hutchins and his team at Cryptos Logic realized the gravity of the situation. They were now the only barrier preventing WannaCry from spreading further. They managed to mitigate the DDoS attack by redirecting the domain to a cached version capable of handling massive traffic loads. By the second day, data showed that Hutchins' domain had prevented over 2 million infections, highlighting just how catastrophic the attack could have been if not for the discovery of the kill switch. Following the incident, Marcus Hutchins was hailed as a cybercrime hero. However, he disliked the attention, which brought unwanted media scrutiny. Journalists camped outside his home and strangers tried to uncover his identity and personal information. On top of this pressure, Hutchins remained vigilant, knowing that the domain could go offline at any moment, risking a resurgence of WannaCry infections. 3 months later, in August 2017, Hutchins' life was upended again. After attending the DEFCON hacker convention in Las Vegas, he was arrested at the airport by the FBI on his way home. The charges stem from his teenage years when Hutchins had developed and sold a malware called Kronos, designed to steal banking credentials. Kronos remained a threat to banks worldwide, and Hutchins had sold it with the assistance of someone he had met online, known as Vinny K. Initially pleading not guilty, Hutchins faced years of legal battles. In April 2019, he accepted a plea deal, which reduced his charges to conspiracy to commit fraud and actively marketing the Kronos malware. While he faced a potential 10-year prison sentence, the judge took his contributions to stopping WannaCry into account, as well as his ongoing work to defend against cyber attacks. The judge ruled in Hutchins' favor, releasing him without any jail time. Today, Marcus Hutchins is a free man, but his story serves as a reminder of the complex and often paradoxical nature of cybersecurity heroes. As previously mentioned, the WannaCry ransomware attack impacted over 150 countries and approximately 230,000 computers worldwide. Among the hardest hit nations, Russia experienced the most severe disruption, with more than half of the infected computers originating there. India, Ukraine, and Taiwan were also significantly affected. One of the most prominent victims of the attack was the UK's National Health Service, NHS. Within the NHS, over 70,000 devices were impacted, including critical systems such as computers, MRI scanners, blood testing devices, theater equipment, and over 1,200 pieces of diagnostic equipment. The attack cost the NHS an estimated £92 million. Globally, the economic impact was staggering, with losses estimated to be between $4 and $8 billion. Despite the scale of the attack, the hackers behind WannaCry made surprisingly little money. As of June 14, 2017, when the attacks began to subside, the attackers had only collected $130,634.77 in ransom payments. Victims were urged not to pay the ransom, as doing so encouraged cybercriminals while offering no guarantee of recovering their data. This skepticism was well-founded, as nearly all victims who paid the ransom never regained access to their files. Initially, it was believed that Windows XP users were the primary targets of WannaCry. However, reports later revealed that over 98% of infections occurred on systems running unpatched versions of Windows 7. Less than 0.1% of victims were using Windows XP. In Russia, many users avoided updates, believing they caused more problems than they solved. Additionally, a significant portion of Russian computers ran pirated versions of Windows, which did not receive critical security updates. Microsoft had in fact released a patch addressing the SMB vulnerability months prior to the attack. In response to WannaCry's widespread impact, Microsoft took the unprecedented step of releasing updates for older systems that had reached end of support, including Windows XP and Server 2003. To this day, WannaCry remains a latent threat. If the kill switch domain that Marcus Hutchins registered were to go offline, millions of dormant infections could potentially reactivate. However, their effectiveness would be limited if affected systems had already applied Microsoft's critical patch. The legacy of WannaCry still lingers in the cybersecurity landscape. According to Trend Micro, WannaCry was the most detected malware family in 2020 due to its ability to exploit unpatched systems. Similarly, F-Secure reported that the most frequently seen exploit continues to be against the SMB v1 vulnerability using EternalBlue. The fact that attackers are still attempting to exploit this vulnerability underscores a troubling reality. There are still organizations around the world that have not applied the necessary patches. This ongoing negligence serves as a stark reminder of the importance of regular updates and proactive cybersecurity measures. Four years after the WannaCry attack, the identity of its creators remains unknown. Accusations have been directed at the Lazarus Group, a hacking collective with alleged ties to North Korea, but these claims remain speculative and unconfirmed. This leads us to the question, who is truly responsible for the catastrophic damage caused by WannaCry? Is it the NSA for stockpiling critical exploits and failing to inform the appropriate entities about the vulnerabilities? Is it the shadow brokers who stole and released these exploits into the wild? Should blame fall on the developers of WannaCry, or does it lie with Microsoft for not identifying and addressing the vulnerability sooner? While there may be some truth to all these perspectives, the reality is that the actions of these organizations are largely beyond the control of the general public and business owners, the primary victims of ransomware attacks. Ultimately, the solution is straightforward. Individuals and organizations must take responsibility for securing their systems. The most critical measure is to maintain a consistent schedule for updating devices and to avoid using outdated operating systems. Outdated systems put employee and customer data at significant risk, often creating vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit. When it comes to ransomware, the single most important defense is to ensure frequent data backups. The more frequent the backups, the better. This precaution can significantly reduce the impact of an attack as less data is lost. It is also important to note that paying the ransom is rarely a viable solution. Less than 50% of ransomware payments result in data being returned to victims. In most cases, paying only leads to financial loss and no recovery of data. We are heading toward a future with cyber attacks that are bigger and more destructive than WannaCry. The only reliable defense against these threats is to combine awareness with action. Organizations and individuals must invest in robust cybersecurity strategies, regularly update systems, implement frequent backups, and recognize the real risk of cyber attacks. What have you or your organization done to protect yourselves? Did you experience the WannaCry malware? I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown of the WannaCry ransomware attack. Make sure to like and subscribe for more cyber breakdowns.